Welcome to the Power of Purity podcast, the show that empowers men to experience their sexual gift in a healthier way. Now here's your host, Tony Ingracia.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Power of Purity podcast. I'm glad that you're with me today for this particular episode. And the fact is that I'm doing something that I normally don't do, and I'm recording this episode very spontaneously. I've just been thinking some things today that I thought that I would share with you. So I really don't have any notes or anything planned. I'm just kind of talking from my head and my heart about what I've been meditating on. And I've entitled this episode, White Knuckles. And that's really what I want to talk to you guys about, just share some thoughts with you about this concept called white knuckles. And I'm actually going to have to decide what to do with this episode. I'm not sure if I'll put it in the regular lineup or if I'll just go ahead and publish it as a bonus episode. But one way or the other, I've entitled the episode White Knuckles. And the reason is I was actually talking to a gentleman recently, and he was describing this concept of white knuckles. And this is a man really that I'm rather proud of because I feel like he's making significant progress in his recovery. I think it's fair to say that he's had a sexual addiction and certainly an addiction to pornography and masturbation. This is a married man, and for years and years he's been acting out sexually outside of the context of his relationship with his wife. And so he discovered the podcast and began to listen and began to comprehend some of these ideas of wife-size sex and the sexual alliance, and that as a Christian man, he should be expressing his sexual gift only with his wife within the context of his marriage. So I guess he had some conviction about this, and so he's been trying to work on it, and through a series of events actually contacted me, and we actually started doing some work together. But anyway, he's trying to bring his sexual gift into the context of his marriage, which I think is really awesome. And the fact is, he's trying to go through this metamorphosis from the old person to the new person, in the way of example, just using my own name, from the old Tony to the new Tony, from the old cycle to the new cycle, the old cycle where he was acting out sexually, dishonoring God with the expression of his sexual gift, dishonoring his wife with the expression of his sexual gift, and what I call stealing orgasms, or helping himself to bonus orgasms, or double dipping. So he's seeing the error of these things, and he's attempting to bring his sexual gift back into his marriage, this concept of sexual exclusivity, which we believe is the design, will, and plan of God. But there's this dilemma, and it has to do with this interim period between the old cycle and the new cycle. And I might suggest that it's this interim period where this issue of white knuckles becomes a reality as we seek to metamorphose from the old person to the new person, from the old cycle to the new cycle. For most of us, it isn't something that necessarily happens really easily. And so we get to this place where we are in this place of serious tension and conflict and temptation. And let's say that I've had this old cycle, this sexual rhythm I've been acting out in disobedience to God, maybe watching porn and masturbating or whatever it is that I'm doing. And now I'm trying to change that. I want to stop doing that behavior because I know it's wrong. But as I try to stop, I find that I'm in this place of tension and conflict and temptation. And guys get in this place where it feels almost overwhelming, this tension, to keep doing the patterns that I've been doing for so long. In the metaphor of the groove, which I've shared with you guys before, essentially I want to keep following the old groove, right? And actually, that's the very problem with the old groove, is that I don't even have to try to follow the old groove. It's so embedded in my head, my heart, my life, my soul. If you picture that scratch on the tabletop that you scratch hundreds and then thousands of times, a groove becomes established, and pretty soon you don't even have to think about going to the left, because the groove goes to the left, so you just follow the groove. And so when you come to this day or this period of time in your life where you decide, I don't want to follow this old groove. This old groove is counterproductive. It's not pleasing to God. It's not honoring to my wife. But the problem is you're coming down the path, you want to go to the right, but everything in you is trying to pull you to the left, to repeat the old cycles and the old patterns that you've been accustomed to and that have become embedded in your life. These old habits of maybe looking at porn and masturbating and these things. And so there's this tremendous tension where you find yourself kind of torn in the middle, where part of you is trying to be the new you. You don't want to look at porn anymore because you know it's wrong. You don't want to masturbate apart from your wife because you know it's wrong. You don't want to double dip. You don't want to steal orgasms. You don't want to express your sexual gift apart from your wife. And that's for real. There's part of you that doesn't want to do that anymore. But the problem is there's this other part of you that feels this sexual itch, and it wants to follow the old groove. And maybe a couple days have passed, you haven't had your orgasm, and all of a sudden the temptation's there, and the thought occurs to you to look at porn or to masturbate, and you want to follow that old groove, and you want to do the old pattern. You want to follow the old cycle. And so now is this tremendous place of tension and conflict and a kind of torment. And this man was essentially complaining to me, Tony, it's so hard because I find myself white knuckling it. And that's where I get the title of this episode, White Knuckles. And I'm pretty sure this concept of white knuckles is something that we can all relate to. It's when we get in this place of tension in between the old you and the new you, and you're trying to be the new you, but the old you is holding on to you and trying to compel you to continue to be the old you, trying to compel you to follow the old groove, trying to compel you to stay in the old cycle that you've been enslaved in for all this time. So what we do is we bring out the white knuckles. And if you can picture a guy holding on for dear life, like if you can picture him, let's say he's holding on to the ledge of a cliff. He fell off and he's got his fingers over the ledge and he's squeezing as tight as he possibly can. And his knuckles are turning white knuckles, because he's holding so hard. He's trying to hold on. And this force of gravity is trying to pull him and make him fall down. But he's trying to hold on because he doesn't want to fall. He's trying to do something new. And so white knuckles speaks of our own self-effort, our own self-energy, our own self-determination to hold on and to try to make ourselves do the right thing. And this place of white knuckles can be so difficult and so hard and even discouraging. And I guess really that any person who has ever fought any kind of an addiction or tried to change something in their life can probably relate to this period of white knuckles. If the person is an alcoholic, they've come to the place where they're trying not to drink anymore. They realize that drinking has been counterproductive. It's destroying their life. They have to stop drinking. So they've entered a process of recovery and they're going to try to stop drinking now. But the problem is something in them, the old person, still wants to drink. So they wake up one day and they have this urge, they have this itch They have this allergy. I want to drink. I need to drink. Their body is maybe quivering. Their body wants a drink so bad, and everything in them wants to follow the old groove. And they want to drink so bad, but they know they can't drink. They know they don't want to drink. So they're holding on with their hands as tight as they can. The white knuckles, they're trying not to drink. They're going to try not to do it. Or maybe it's a drug addict, and this person is trying not to do drugs anymore, but something in them wants to do drugs. So they come to this place of white knuckles where they're holding on for dear life, and they're trying to fight for their recovery. They're trying to break out of that old cycle into the new cycle. But in between the two cycles is this interim place of this tension and this conflict and this torment where they're trying not to do it, but something in them still is compelling them to do their old behavior. And so they're holding on with all their strength, with all their might, and thus the white knuckles. So I guess that every addict that's ever tried to change their life, every person that's ever entered a process of recovery can relate to this concept of white knuckles. And do you know what I wish, you guys? I wish that I was smart enough to know an answer to this dilemma. I wish that I knew a secret, or I wish that I had a secret formula that I could teach you or that I could show you. Oh, you're in the white knuckle phase where you're trying so hard to do the thing that you know you shouldn't do. You're trying to change your life. You're trying to cut a new groove. You're trying to create a new cycle for your life. You're trying to break free from that old cycle. So you're holding on for dear life. Well, here, I have a secret. Just do A, B, and C, and then the white knuckles will go away. There'll be no more tension, no more conflict, no more torment. You won't have to fight. You won't be overwhelmed with these urges and temptations to follow the old groove and do the old pattern that you've been doing for all these years. And you'll just be delivered from this place of tension and torment. And it will become easy for you, and you won't have to fight for your recovery. You won't have to fight to change who you are and change your life. I wish I knew this secret, you guys, and if I did, I promise you that I would share the secret with you. But I guess I have some bad news, and that is that I'm not really sure that there is a secret that's necessarily going to make this place in our life become easy for us. I think that if we're trying to break out of that old cycle, move into a new cycle, if we're trying to break that addiction, that almost inevitably we're going to come to this place of tension and conflict and torment where we are being pressed from both sides, where something in us wants to do the old behavior, follow the old groove, and yet something in us is committed to becoming the new person, so we want to cut a new groove. And so we're conflicted, we're tormented, there's this tension pulling us. And so we're trying to hold on with all our strength to not follow the old groove, to try to not do the old pattern, because we're trying so hard to do something new. And guys, if I had to choose a proof text here that was complementary to this concept of white knuckles, I immediately think of Romans chapter 7, verses 15 through 25. And let me share this with you. Paul says, I do not understand what I do, for what I want to do, I do not do. But what I hate, I do. As it is no longer I myself who do it, but it is sin that lives within me. For I know that good itself does not dwell in me, that is, in my sinful nature. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, this is what I keep on doing. Now, if I do what I do not want to do, it is no longer I who do it, but it is sin that lives within me that does it. So I find this law at work. Although I want to do good, evil is right there with me. For in my inner being I delight in God's law, but I see another law at work in me, waging war against the law of my mind and making me a prisoner to the law of sin at work within me. And then Paul cries out in verse 24, a phrase that I think that we could all relate to at some point in our life. He says in verse 24, "What a wretched man I am! Who can rescue me from this body that is subject to death?" And so he cries out because he's so tormented from being in this place that is so conflicted within him, where he's trying so hard to do this new thing, to do the right thing. But it seems like he's overwhelmed and tempted constantly to do the very thing that he doesn't want to do. And he's trying to do the right thing, but seems powerless to do it. And his conclusion, what a wretched man I am. Who will rescue me from this body that is subject to death? And he answers his own question in the next verse. Thank God the passage doesn't end with verse 24, because verse 25 then says, "Thanks be to God who delivers me through Jesus Christ our Lord." Praise be to God. And to me, guys, that indicates that there is solution, there is remedy, there is possibility, there is healing, there is redemption. There's the possibility that we can break the old cycle. There's the possibility that we can cut a new groove, that the power that has held us for so long in this old cycle and these old patterns, that power doesn't have to continue to be there over our soul and our heart and our life forever because of God and because of Jesus Christ our Lord. He says, "Thanks be to God who delivers me through Jesus Christ our Lord." So it's something about God and something about Jesus that is the remedy to this dilemma and creates the possibility that we can be new and different and better and healthier people than we've ever been before. And I guess I want to share just a couple other ideas related to this concept of white knuckles. And the first thing that occurs to me is this, that if it comes down to you and your white knuckles against the temptation or against your addiction, it's you and your white knuckles versus the power of your addiction. If it's you and your white knuckles against this powerful thing that has held place in your soul for so long, I hate to say it, but I just don't think that the white knuckles are going to have the strength and the power that we need to see us through to true victory and change and redemption. In other words, the power to change ourselves doesn't lie within ourselves. It's not the strength of my white knuckles. And as so many of us have learned, we try so hard through the power of white knuckles to change who we are, but it doesn't work for most of us. The same thing that Paul is expressing in Romans chapter 7. He's trying so hard to do the right thing, but it seems like no matter how hard he tries, he ends up doing the very thing that he knows he shouldn't do and that he doesn't want to do. So more often than not, if I'm a betting man, I'm going to bet that white knuckles will not allow us to win the game. White knuckles are not going to bring us through to a new place, a healthier place, a place of redemption. White knuckles are not going to allow us to cut a new groove and become the person that God is calling us to be. And that leads me to the other point I wanted to share with you guys about white knuckles. And it's just the idea that we better have something available to us other than just our white knuckles. Because if, in a sense, you open the toolbox and the only thing in there, your only tool is your white knuckles, your ability to hold on and see it through, that's your only tool, then I think your goose is going to be cooked. We better have some more tools in our toolbox. Or said another way, we better have some resources available to us that can help us and empower us and strengthen us in these moments of temptation when it comes down to me and this overwhelming urge to follow the old groove, I better have some resources right there that can really help me and empower me to make it through this place of tension, this place of conflict and torment, this place of the white knuckles. And that reminds me of a story I heard, you guys, and I may have even shared it before on the podcast, I'm not sure. But there was a little boy, his name was Johnny, and he rode the bus home from school every day, and he'd get off the bus, and the way the bus stopped, he had to get off and then walk through an alley, down the alley, the back way to get to his house. And every day he'd get off the bus and he'd start down the alley, and there was a neighborhood bully who would pick on Johnny. So this bully would chase him, he'd throw rocks at him, he'd spit on him, he'd hit him, he'd threaten to beat him up, he'd knock his books out of his hands, and little Johnny was just absolutely being tormented by this neighborhood bully. And this went on and on and on and on. And it seemed like Johnny was absolutely powerless against this bully. The bully is stronger than him. The bully is bigger than him. The bully is meaner than him. The bully is faster than him. So it feels like Johnny has absolutely no chance in his fight against this neighborhood bully. And therefore, this problem is going on and on and on and on. And it's consuming little Johnny. It's tormenting him. It's a place of conflict and tension. And every day he gets on the bus, he's riding home, and he's dreading the fact that he's got to get off the bus and walk through this alley. But then one day comes when he gets off the bus and he begins down the alley, and of all things, out from behind the bushes steps his older brother. His teenage brother steps out, and his teenage brother is there to meet little Johnny and escort him down the alley. And so now little Johnny, with confidence, walks down the alley, gets a big smile on his face, and his big brother is walking right next to him. And so this changes everything, because now little Johnny has a resource available to him that's bigger than him and stronger than him and has these skills and abilities that he doesn't have. So no longer is the situation dependent on who little Johnny is, because now he has resources available, his big brother, that can see him through this situation in the alley. And guess what happened? All of a sudden, the neighborhood bully disappears. The neighborhood bully didn't come out anymore. The neighborhood bully was not able to continue to torment Johnny as he had been doing for so long in the past. And so the point being, you guys, that when we come up against this bully that's been in our life for so long, for many of us, let's just say it's internet pornography and masturbation. This thing has bullied us and bullied us and bullied us. It's tormented us. It's chased us. We've tried to get away from it. We've tried to figure out a new path. And no matter what we've done, this thing has followed us and tormented us and held power over us. And so we need to come to the place, guys, where we have a resource outside of ourselves that is going to enable us in this conflict with the bully that's been pushing us around for way too long. And the good news is that these resources are available to us, as Paul mentions in Romans chapter 7, verse 25, when he says, "Thanks be to God who delivers me through Jesus Christ our Lord." And with that being said, you guys, the final thing I wanted to share with you along this concept of white knuckles concerns the idea of what do we need to do in order to manage this period of time in between the old cycle and the new cycle. How do we manage this period of time when we're trying to cut the new groove, but everything in us wants to follow this old groove? And therefore, we're in this very stuck place, this tormented place, where it feels like all we have is our white knuckles and we're trying to hold on. And I want to share with you guys just a few thoughts about what I think made a significant difference for me when I was kind of in this interim period between the old Tony and the new Tony. I was trying to metamorphose from the old Tony to the new Tony. And what was it that enabled me to make that journey, that enabled me to overcome the strength and the power and the momentum of the old groove as I was seeking to cut a new groove in my heart and life, as I was seeking to move from a man of impurity to become a man of purity. And I think for me, a key concept was this idea that recovery happens moment by moment. And if you guys remember my story, for those of you that have heard it, when God finally led me to the place of what I call my holy vow and brought me to this divine appointment where I met with this pastor named Pastor Bruce, and he led me in a very preliminary understanding of God's design for human sexuality. Really, he introduced me for the first time to the concept that I later came to call wife-size sex. He didn't say it just that way, but he was introducing me to this idea that, Tony, your sexual gift belongs in your marriage. Your sexual gift belongs with your wife. You can never, ever express your sexual gift apart from your wife again. And when he was telling me this, you'll remember that I objected to him, and I said, Pastor, I can't do that because my wife never, ever wants to have sex with me. So if I can only have sex and have an orgasm with my wife, but my wife never wants an orgasm, then how in the world am I going to do this? I can't do this. It's impossible for me to do this because I know myself. I don't think that I can do what you're talking about. And I literally was crying, telling this man, I can't do this. And he said the most beautiful thing to me because he looked at me and he said to me, Tony, you're right. I'm not telling you this is going to be easy. I'm not even telling you it's going to be hard. I'm telling you it's going to be impossible. And therefore, you are going to be more dependent on God than you've ever been in your whole life. And if God doesn't help you do this, then you cannot do it. And you're therefore going to have to trust in God in a deeper way than you ever have in your whole life. Not even a day at a time, and not even an hour at a time, but literally a minute at a time. You're going to have to cry out to God for His mercy and for His grace, for His strength, for His power, for His help, to help you make it the next minute of your life without acting out, without looking at porn, without masturbating. To be the man that God wants you to be for the next minute. And if by God's grace you make it that minute, then you start over and you beg God and cry out to God in humble, broken dependence. God, help me to make it this minute, God. Help me, God, by your strength to make it one more minute. And if you make it that minute, then start over and make it the next minute. And that's how you're going to live your life now. 1 minute at a time in deeper dependence upon God than you ever have before. And what I'm saying, guys, is I believe that was a power principle for me. That when I came into this interim period where all I had was Tony and my white knuckles, that if it was up to me to just try to hang on and through my sheer determination and self-will and self-motivation that I'm going to hold on and make myself do the right thing, that my white knuckles could not get me through. But you see, now it was no longer just Tony and his white knuckles. Those weren't the only two resources that were available to me that I had to call upon, because now God is coming into the circumference of my life, into this situation. So now it's Tony and my white knuckles I'm trying to hold on, but God is here, and I'm trusting in God in the same way little Johnny got off the bus And it's not him by himself anymore because his big brother was there. There's somebody else there that can help me do and help me be who I'm supposed to be. And so I can cry out to God in humble, broken dependence upon God, and I can make it a minute at a time, This minute, then the next minute, then the next minute, by God's grace and mercy. And if I can make it a minute at a time, it's going to help me through this transition of the metamorphosis from the old Tony to the new Tony. And then a second thing I wanted to share with you guys that I think was very significant for me through this period of white knuckles. And in a sense, I think the best way for me to share it with you is basically this snow cone metaphor, which I've alluded to before. But imagine in this metaphor that somebody offers me a snow cone, and I'm going to make the snow cone strawberry because I love strawberry. Red is my favorite color. So they offer me this snow cone, and it's piled high, and it's bright red, so it looks beautiful. And it just looks so delightful. And I put it to my lips and I taste it, and it has this wonderful taste. It tastes so good, and it looks so good. And I want this so bad. And yet, despite the fact that it looks so good and it tastes so good, I happen to be aware of the fact that somebody has put poison in that snow cone. And I can't see the poison, and I can't taste the poison, but I know that the poison is in there. In other words, the snow cone is toxic. It's going to kill me. If I eat this thing, it's going to destroy me. And yet it looks good. I want it. It looks so pleasurable to me, and it even tastes good. But I know now, I know something. I have some information that is so significant, it changes everything. And it overrides the fact that it looks good and it tastes good, because this information is informing me that even though it looks good and tastes good, if I eat it, it's going to kill me. And it's like God brought me to this place in my journey where I could see my sexual sin in a very different way, because it always looked good to me. It always tasted good. It always felt good when I participated in it. But God was creating a frame of reference in my life where I was beginning to see my sexual sin in a different way. And I could see the poison that was in it. And even though it feels good and it tastes good and it looks good and I want it and it seems so pleasurable, and yet how am I going to continue to participate in this thing if I know it has poison in it, and the very thing that I think is pleasing to me, the very thing that I think I want so bad, is the very thing that in fact is going to kill me and destroy me? So once I could see that side by side, if in a sense, I've talked about before, you see the benefit of the product, but you also see the price that you're going to pay, it informs you and it empowers you to make a quality decision. And then I come to the place where I can say to myself, dude, are you kidding me? I don't care how good that snow cone looks, and I don't care how good it tastes. I don't care how pleasurable it seems to be to me, because I happen to know it's toxic, it has poison in it, and it's going to kill me. So get that thing away from me. There is no way that I'm going to eat that snow cone anymore, because I know what it's doing to me. And so God brought me to this place where it's like I could see my sexual sin different. I could see it for what it was. And all those years before, I was sneaking, hiding, and thought I was getting away with it, and it's no big deal. Nobody knows. It's what's it costing me? It's not costing me anything. All those lies and deceptions that I had believed in the past, they were all exposed for what they were. And I couldn't believe that anymore because I knew those things weren't true. It's like God gave me a new point of view, a new frame of reference that was informing me and therefore empowering me to say, I do not want that snow cone anymore. So now, as I'm trying to go through this metamorphosis from the old cycle to the new cycle, the old Tony to the new Tony, and I'm in this place of tension where something in me is rising up, this allergy, this itch. And part of me wants to do the old thing. Man, I want to look at porn. I want to masturbate. I'm going to express my sexual gift apart from my wife. So I have the urge to do it. But there's also some new information available to me that's showing me that if I do it, I know the consequences that I'm going to reap. I know there's poison in the snow cone. So are you kidding me? I'm not going to do it. Given the choice, it empowers me to make it through that place of tension and conflict and torment. And in a sense, it empowers the strength of my hands to continue to hold on by God's grace and mercy and to make the right decision and to continue to cut the new groove, because there's no way I'm going to follow the old groove anymore. And I think the third thing that I'd share with you guys is in a way related to what I'm already saying. And that is, God brought me to the place where I could see with clarity what I was fighting for. And I could see that I was fighting for what I might call the highest values of my life. And because my sexual sin had extracted such a high price from my life and from my soul, I was about to lose everything of most importance to me, my marriage, my family, my children. And so I realized I was in for the fight of my life. I'm fighting here for my marriage. I'm fighting for my home. I'm fighting for my wife. I'm fighting for my family. I'm fighting for my sons. I'm fighting for my ministry. I'm fighting for my effectiveness for God and for His kingdom as a son of God. I'm fighting for my future. I'm fighting even for my finances, because if I get divorced, my finances are going to be destroyed and my life's going to be destroyed. So in my estimation, what is worth fighting for more than these things, the highest values of my life? It was worth the fight. It's like I could see what I was fighting for. And when I could see that, it empowered me for this battle, so that now when I'm in this interim place and the tension is there and I feel this thing calling me, the allergy, the momentum of the old groove trying to make me follow the old course of action. So I feel myself, man, I want to look at porn. Man, I want to masturbate. I need to have an orgasm. But at the same time, I could see what those things were costing me. That my acting out sexually, that my addiction, that my stealing orgasms apart from my wife was costing me my marriage and my family and my home and my sons, my children, my future, my effectiveness as a son of God. Are you kidding me? If I have to choose between the two, to have an orgasm through porn and masturbation, or my family, my home, my future, are you kidding me? There's no choice there. The stakes are way too high. I'm fighting for the highest values of my life. And when I could see it that way, it empowered me to resist the temptation because it just wasn't worth it anymore. And with that being said, you guys, I see that I'm over time for this episode. I just sat down and I just kind of been thinking out loud. Let me finish this episode by just mentioning that the power of purity consists of kind of a body of work that I presented, really just what God is teaching me and how God is changing my heart and life, how God is helping me to honor Him with the expression of my sexual gift. And I just want to mention a couple resources that are there. I have 30 videos on the Power of Purity website. It's a video conference that I did, the Power of Purity video conference. In session 21, it's entitled Battle Plan, and I share 14 elements of my battle plan as I was fighting for my sexual purity. 14 different principles that empowered me to make it through this phase of the white knuckles as I was going through the metamorphosis from the old Tony to the new Tony. So you might want to check out that episode, Battle Plan. I think there's some good information in that can empower a man to make it through these days of torment and difficulty when you feel like you're white-knuckling it and you just don't know how you're going to make it. It's these kind of principles that are very helpful. And then in the Power of Purity podcast itself, I did a 5-part series, episodes 80 to 84, that was entitled 7 Relationships Foundational to Sexual Purity. And I talk about 7 different relationships that we have in our life that we need to strengthen and we need to be aware of and work on if we're going to be the men of purity that God has called us to be. So I would reference you to that series, 7 Relationships Foundational to Sexual Purity. And then I just recently published a 3-part series of podcast episodes that I entitled Temptation Preparation. And in that series, I shared 8 principles of temptation and how to deal with temptation. And then I shared 10 principles on how to prepare in advance to manage the temptations that will inevitably come your way. So with that being said, guys, I need to wrap it up, but I encourage you to press on in your walk of purity. I know that sometimes we come to this place where we feel like it's us and our white knuckles, and we've got to hold on tight if we're going to make it through. And I just want to remind us, guys, that there's a lot of resources that God has made available to us, like our big brother meeting us at the bus stop, and we can't do it by ourselves, but with our big brother by our side, as Paul says in Romans chapter 7, verse 25, "Thanks be to God who delivers me through Jesus Christ our Lord." The resources are there, you guys, and we can make it through by the grace and the mercy of God. So God bless you guys. Thank you for being with me for this episode of the Power of Purity podcast. I pray that it's been encouraging. Have a blessed week. Have a blessed day. And I'll look forward to seeing you in our next episode. Bye-bye now.
Thanks for listening. Visit powerofpurity.org for more resources and information. And if this podcast has been helpful or encouraging, please invite a friend to listen. Until next time, remember, there's power in purity.